We are told a dominant group is defined by its statistical power. The data from case file ND75 indicates this is false. The core paradox under investigation is not a political anomaly, it is a systemic narrative failure. The subject's identity is no longer a function of its empirical state. It has become a malfunction of the narrative ecosystem. The evidence indicates a complete, irreconcilable divergence. On one side, the narrative reality, a pervasive sense of vilification and victimization. On the other, the statistical reality, continued, measurable economic and bureaucratic dominance. This disconnect is the core anomaly. The anomaly is not political, it is a predictable failure mode, one rooted in the physics of social networks. You see, systemic belief change isn't a simple contagion. It's not like a virus passed through a single point of contact. No, it is a complex contagion. To adopt a new social norm, a new core belief, an individual requires coordinated social pressure from multiple trusted sources. Reinforcing signals must come from their peers, their institutions, and the culture they consume to fundamentally alter their core programming. So, what's the threshold? Damon Santola's 2018 research, published in the journal Science, isolated the precise tipping point for a systemic reality shift. The number is 25%. A committed, unwavering minority of just 1/4 of a population is sufficient to overturn the majority and establish a new, non-negotiable social convention. The network physics here are clear and unforgiving. Below that 25% threshold, the system has memory. It maintains stability, resisting change. But once that 25% is breached, a phase transition occurs. The new norm cascades through the entire network, overriding the previous status quo. It becomes the new reality. And at this point, the system's drive for objective truth is completely superseded by the social pressure to conform. The 25% mechanism is not theoretical. It is active in the wild. Analysis of case file ND75 provides the evidence chain. First, the economic baseline. The narrative of generalized impoverishment within the subject group is directly contradicted by IHDS 2011 data. Brahmins maintain the highest average annual household income, over 167,000 rupees, and the highest asset ownership score. The victim narrative is simply not supported by the primary economic indicators. Second, the demographic baseline. Analysis from the same data source estimates the subject group constitutes a micro-minority of just 4 to 5% of the total population. This is critical. Their economic power, combined with their numerical weakness, makes them a mathematically perfect target for antagonistic framing by larger political groups. Third, the political utility of the mechanism. This 1990s slogan from the Bahujan Samaj Party translates to, "The Brahmin, the merchant, and the warrior hit them with shoes." This is a clear demonstration of that antagonistic framing in action. It functions as an electoral technology designed to consolidate a majority by framing a small elite minority as a monolithic enemy. Fourth, cultural production. Media sentiment analysis confirms a significant narrative shift. From the 1950s to the 80s, the cinematic villain was the Zamadar, an oppressor defined by class. Post-2010, that villain has evolved. Now the antagonist is defined explicitly by caste markers. The sacred thread, the Janu, has become a visual shorthand for ideological villainy, reinforcing the complex contagion through cultural signals. Fifth, the legislative friction point. NCRB data from 2016 shows a stark discrepancy. The conviction rate for general criminal cases is around 46%, but for cases filed under the SC/ST Prevention of Atrocities Act, it plummets to just 15.4%. To the subject group, this data is not interpreted as evidence of systemic bias against victims. It is interpreted as direct proof of legal terrorism, a system weaponized against them, fueling their narrative of victimhood. Finally, the state response creates a terminal narrative paradox. The economically weaker section quota was designed to address poverty in the subject group, but the 2024 cutoff data shows the EWS score is lower than both the general and the OBC categories. This validates the poor elite hypothesis. But the consequence is that the very group that championed merit is now forced to adopt the reservation system it opposed, nullifying their primary ideological claim. The long-term effect of this hijacking mechanism is the degradation of the system's core processing capability. It ceases to accurately perceive reality. This leads to a state of epistemic closure. The system becomes a closed loop, completely incapable of self-correction. Contradictory data is no longer assimilated as new information. Instead, it's immediately reinterpreted as further proof of the original belief structure. Evidence against the narrative becomes evidence for it. So what happens when evidence assimilation drops to zero? The system stops learning. It becomes brittle.
and it fractures into parallel, non-communicating realities.
The result is two mutually exclusive operating systems running on the same societal hardware. They are fundamentally incompatible. Narrative A, Brahminical hegemony, identifies the Brahmin male as the villain and filters data to suit that claim. Narrative B, civilizational pride, identifies the urban Axel as the villain and filters data accordingly. They cannot communicate because they no longer share a protocol for determining what is real.
The terminal diagnosis is logged.
This system is not broken.
It is functioning exactly as designed by network physics.
The mathematical guarantee is fracture. The final state, omniwar. A state of constant low-level conflict between competing sense-making apparatuses. A war where the goal is not persuasion, but the complete annihilation of the opposing narrative reality.
End log.